Each councillor is asked a maximum of 2 questions about one topic or 2 separate questions about 2 different topics. Councillors have a maximum of 2 supplementary questions. If a councillor asks 1 question, they have 1 supplementary. If a councillor asks 2 questions, they can ask 1 supplementary per question asked. Let's start off then with green number 1. That's a question on the city centre accessibility by Councillor Levan. Is Councillor Levan here? And that's a question for Councillor Plowden. Councillor Levan, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much for your response on disabled access. I also have questions about the carbon emissions from the project, the city centre proposals, and I wonder whether you can talk about whether it's being thought about the carbon impact that it will have on the city.
So, in short, this is still a strategic outline business case, so that means that the carbon hasn't been calculated because it's too early to do that, and obviously if, as a result of the consultation, we'll be making changes, that will impact the carbon. But in terms of, I like to think of it in 3 ways. One, the overall strategy is looking at both kind of carrot and stick approach. These kind of measures in the city centre are the carrot, give people the infrastructure to move more sustainably. And then things like, our parking strategy that Rob Bryan will be working on, and other things are more of the stick approach then to encourage it. So it's a sort of balanced strategy. Alongside that, we've got the our active travel team who go out and work with businesses and individuals to encourage them to change, and they do that before, during and after major roadworks, particularly as we know some people will be disrupted by that. This is part of, so that's the overall strategy. Then within that there's a multi-pronged approach, and this is obviously part of working with other strategic corridors and alongside the CAS and other things to really sort of push for net zero targets. Given that this gives us significant improvements to walking, cycling, wheeling and public transport, this is enhanced by the other CRSDS projects which will be happening at the same time. And then just in terms of more operationally, as part of our procurement process, we undertake an environmental impact assessment. All suppliers and contractors have a contractual responsibility to make sure that they're focused on sustainability impacts and mitigations. And a lot of these projects are working on the existing adopted highway, so not creating new infrastructure, and actually a lot of the infrastructure here is getting a bit tired, so it would have needed a refresh anyway. What's the best possible way to sort of minimise the carbon but also change it is to do that in one go. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you very much. Next is Labour question 1 on Bristol Waste. That's from Councillor Durston for Councillor Dyer. Councillor Durston, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. Thank you. So a number of councillors today have raised questions about Bristol Waste and actions or so it's clearly an issue of huge concern to people. Thank you, Councillor Dyer, for your answer, and I appreciate that this is a complicated issue. I heard that Bristol Waste has recently appointed a new managing director. Do you have confidence that they'll be able to turn this situation around?
Thank you, Councillor Durston. Yes, I do. I think it's fair to say that there has been considerable problems with waste in the past, some very trying circumstances, and part of that was also reflected in the reality that there have been changes of staff as well. The current or the new permanent appointee of a managing director follows on from the appointment of an interim managing director, and that managing director, David Knight, was appointed with the precise aim of turning around the company from where it was before. We believe he has now made progress in terms of turning around the company in terms of its financial performance. The new managing director that's coming forward will need to drive that on further, and a key part of that would be addressing the concerns that many of us as councillors, as well as many residents in Bristol, are aware of with non-deliveries and collection problems. So we will be working through the business planning and the KPIs for the business to ensure that that's at the top of the agenda.
Thank you. Question 1 on the protection of local shops and media. Councillor Clark for Councillor Clark, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Yes, I do have one quick one. Thank you very much, Councillor Brown, for your fulsome response. Point 3 of your response, the concern that we have is around maybe the shops, existing shops that are on the periphery of the designated high streets. And is there any way that the council can protect those shops? Because once they've gone, we will lose that asset and that resource forever. And obviously we need to do as much as we can to make those businesses viable. So is there anything that the council can do to help support those businesses? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Just before I answer, I just want to say earlier on I spent a session in here with some students from UE, and some of them have joined us to observe Democracy in Action. They're doing a live project where they're going to compose motions, which we may eventually see in this chamber, depending on what they are and if anybody wants to sponsor them. Anyway, that's beside the point. To answer your question, Councillor Clark, outside of our various centres, so district centres and high streets that are designated within our existing local plan and the proposed local plan, there is very limited amount on what we can do to protect commercial premises that come forward for development because of changes made by the previous government. It remains to be seen what the new government may do in those scenarios. Those premises which are within designated centres obviously have an additional layer of protection because of the local plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. And can I also say I'm also delighted to see students from UE attending Council today. You're very welcome. So let's move on to Green Question 2, which is knife crime. That's to Councillor Dyer. Councillor Barnes, you've got one supplementary, should you wish.
It was good to hear about all of the different actions that we're taking knife crime. The thing that stands out to me is that as a ward councillor, I feel very involved with any of the things that you brought up. So is it possible that we can kind of change how involved ward councillors can be, or maybe get more information out to ward councillors, especially in areas where there was a particularly affected by this issue?
Yes, we can. I'll talk to the relevant officers and arrange for that to happen in those wards most affected.
Thank you. And Councillor Hucker, how could I possibly miss you out? But we've got Conservative question 1 on the Bristol Beacon lessons learned, and that's a question for Councillor Dyer. Councillor Hucker, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Lord. That's fine. As it happens, I have a supplementary because the leader's response was clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hucker. So to Labour question 2 on Novas Hill and Councillor Durston. Councillor Durston, you have one supplementary for Councillor Plowden.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Plowden, for your answer. Of course, I know funding for these kinds of projects is limited, but a lot of transport does come from grants. We're spending significant amounts on ambitious schemes for the city centre. So even when grants become available in the future, can you commit to prioritising some of the less affluent areas of the city over central Bristol?
I'm really happy to be working with all members to try and work out what our priorities are for the future funding round, particularly CRSTS2. So if the current government honours that, is another very healthy amount of funding. And I particularly would like to see a bit more emphasis not only on decarbonisation but also on road safety and thinking about the needs of people who are walking, wheeling and cycling. So I'd be happy to work through that, and particularly in collaboration with area committees who I hope will come up with some lists of what they want to do, and we'll have to have a look at what the area committees, what's reasonable at an area committee level, but I wouldn't want them to be held back in their ambition, so that we can maybe take some of the really good ideas and move them into those big funding packages.
Thank you. Next is Lib 2 on recycling collections. This is from Councillor Gooch to Councillor Fodor. Councillor Gooch, do you have a supplementary?
I do. Councillor Fodor, Thank you for your answer. One of the problems, though, seems to be an internal issue of communication. So we raise the issues of streets that have been missed, and we raise it, and we raise it, and we raise it, and nothing happens. And it appears that the only person who seems to be able to do anything about this is Ken Lawson, and he's brilliant if you can get hold of him, but he's very, very busy. Even when we tell other people at Bristol Waste about streets that have been missed on several successive weeks, it still is not picked up. So there just seemed to be an internal communication problem, and an external, so a communication problem with them picking up what we're sending in, but also from actually getting actioned internally within Bristol Waste. And I don't know what we can do about that, because it seems like we're just screaming into the void.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was a question, what can we do about that? So communication between our contract manager, who you've named, who is very helpful, and the contractor, which is Bristol Waste, I think is as good as it can be. But what we need is that the system's in place, that they flag to themselves when they miss streets. And I've had a briefing on how their system picks up rounds that are not completed because they were missing rounds. And if you're at the end of those rounds, that was why it was happening regularly. And that is the most frustrating when it happens more than once, week after week. So we've asked for information on how to improve the communication. They've put more resources back into the service because resources were taken out. They've now been put back in. So I'm hoping the number of missed streets will go down, and I'm hoping they're specifically attending to the bits that were difficult to do at the end of rounds, and the difficult steps and paths and complicated rounds. And so we're hoping that they get on top of that. And it is important that the contract manager, Ken, is kept in the loop, because he has to know that they are putting in place improvements. And the report I've referred to in the answer shows how we wanted to learn the lessons and get things improved. And there's a major effort to do that. But I'm sorry it's taking time. It's frustrating for all of us. Thanks.
Thank you. Conservative use of bus lanes. You've got one supplementary for Councillor Plowden, should you wish.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, thank you, Ed, for your response. I probably should have made it clear in my question that Bristol Waste are only looking to use a relatively small number of bus lanes rather than the whole network of bus lanes. And they think that 10 minutes saved in traffic could result in an additional 41 refuse collections and 25 recycling collections. So with that fact in mind, would you be willing to have a conversation with Bristol Waste?
I'm always willing to listen to people, but I, both as a politician and as an officer, a very, very long list of very worthy reasons why people should be able to use bus lanes. And I'm not going to try and repeat them all because there's a lot of them, but it's if we were to allow them all in, they wouldn't fulfil what we want them to do, frankly. And so this is another case where it's a difficult decision. I'm willing to listen to the case, but there's plenty of other council services that want to use them, and we've said no consistently because we think they should really be very clear and very reserved for what they're intended to do.
Thank you.
I should point out the Lord Mayor's not allowed to use, so you know. Green question 3 is on residence parking schemes. That's Councillor Freeman to Councillor Plowden. Councillor Freeman, do you have a supplementary?
No, I don't, thank you.
Thank you very much. So next is Labour question 3 on HIV prevention services. Councillor Self, you've got 2 supplementaries should you wish for Councillor Francis.
Thank you. I've heard that apparently the proposed cut to the Help When You Need It, which would end support for HIV, is set to be dropped in the next Adult Social Care Committee meeting. Please can you confirm, is this the case?
Apologies. I had a question, so that's a bit unusual. Right, so this is an interesting question because we are in a committee system. The committee system has a process by which we respond to issues that come into the system before it's actually relayed to the wider public and to the wider councillor group. I'm not sure how that question could be asked of me when there was a consultation. That consultation ended about 8 days ago, and there is a process which we all have to follow if we are operating under a democratic system and under a fair system. So therefore that question isn't actually a reasonable question until such time that we publish the information in, as we would do with any other area. So I do know that there's a lot of information going online and making claims that the Greens are cutting services, and that's not the truth. So therefore, I'm a bit reluctant to answer your question right at this moment in time. You will receive the relevant information when it is being released, and that is fair for everybody. So if I was to say to you, right now, this is a decision, that would be an unfair decision because it's a decision made by the committee, as opposed to myself. I'm not cabinet, I am in a committee system. So we are in a democratic service and in a democratic system, and the committee will make that decision.
Councillor Self, do you have a second supplementary?
I think that is it. No further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've lived in question 3 on the same of. That's from Councillor Kent for Councillor Townsend. Councillor Kent, you've got one supplementary.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thanks for the full answer, which was positive. When we entered into the safety valve, there was concern that cost reductions would be found through reducing the amount of EHCPs issued. So are you able to share with us, or at least have the figures sent on the percentage of EHCP applications that were refused, and whether this number has increased since we entered the safety valve? Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kent, apologies. Councillor Townsend doesn't appear to be here, members. So what I do is we get a written response to that supplementary question, if you can forward that. Thank you very much indeed. Sorry about that. Sorry, next we have Conservative question 3 on the Winter Warm Spaces initiative from Councillor Eddy for Councillor Dyer. And Councillor Eddy, you've got 2 supplementary questions.
Firstly, Mayor, I thank the leader for, the leader's replies. 2 questions. One, when will this funding decision be made at committee?
Thank you, Councillor Eddy. In terms of when the funding decision will be made, I mean, if you're referring to the Household Support Fund, the way that's happened in the past, we've received an EOD grant of roughly 8 million for previous years. This year, because of the election, we only received 50% of the grant, 4 million. From the Conservative government. We've now received 4 million from the Labour government. That funding has already been allocated and has been noted by the Strategy and Resources Committee. We do not as yet know if we will receive a further similar household support fund next year. I would be very surprised, however, if the Labour government didn't continue something similar.
Can I thank the leader for that? Question 2, the leader asked the officers to supply me with a copy of this mechanism, please.
I certainly will do.
Thank you. Green question 4, frequency of trains that Ashby Down. That's from Councillor Edwards for Councillor Plowden. Councillor Edwards, you've got 1 supplementary.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So thank you very much for the that got in the answer. it did mention about the sports grounds and that there would be potentially extra trains laid on for the football matches. However, my understanding, I've learned a lot about cricket living in Bishopston and Ashley Down, is that this is not currently going to serve the cricket ground very well. They need more frequent trains. We also do need to be looking at modal shift, so we're getting people using the train as a matter of course, and I think for that we need more frequent services. So as ward councillors, is there anything more that we can do to encourage more frequent more frequent service at this train station? Thank you.
I think the answer is to keep raising it wherever you can, particularly with the Metro Mayor, currently Dan Norris, and with the government, and particularly write to your MP and point out that we've got this new station. It's actually being funded. The trains to stop there are actually being funded by the mayoral combined authority. It's not been taken on as business as usual. So I hope that we could point out to our MPs and the government that as we move to a great British rail and start taking over progressively more and more of this, stations like this should be seen as an asset rather than as something of an annoyance to business as usual. So keep petitioning, and I'll continue to do that as well.
Councillor King, perfect timing. Yeah, we are just in time now for Labour question 4 on council transparency. One supplementary, should you wish?
Thank you. Which one was this? Sorry.
Council transparency.
Oh yeah. Okay. So thank you very much for the reply. So I know it's very much a resource or technical issue with the webcasting of meetings, and I'm sure it's something that we'd all like to see resolved. So I'm just wondering what can be done to ensure that all meetings are webcast? What are the actions that we're taking to do that?
Thank you, Councillor. One of the things that we're hoping to do relatively shortly, or through the project has been delayed, is the introduction of new technology to the Chamber, which will allow automated webcast tech. When that comes on board, that hopefully means that we should be able to cover even more of the meetings than we do at the moment. And as you say, all of us, I think, are keen to see as many meetings covered as possible.
Lib Dem question 4, continued operation of branch libraries. Councillor Kent for Councillor Williams. You've got one supplementary.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I'd like to thank the chair of the committee for the reply. It's great to see you undoing the omnishambles of previous Labour administration. It's great to see our branch libraries open regularly again. I do note that on Twitter, a Labour councillor has again raised the suggestion of future library closures, something they were very keen on in the past. Do you support Labour's library closure plan?
Lord Mayor, I thank my colleague for his question. Let's first of all put in context of where we were and what we've come to. Back in April this year, there were 40 vacancies across the library network. That's a quarter of all the staff posts were actually vacant. By the end of June, that was 31, and now we've made rapid progress, and it's now 3 vacancies, which is broadly normal for a service of that size. So library closures, unadvertised closures are falling, and hopefully we're getting a stable operation right across the city, because this network of libraries is incredibly important to people in the city. As a working class boy myself, I used both Abercynon and Mountain Ash Library when I was growing up to read extra books and read the newspapers, broad breadth of newspapers, and I know lots of people access libraries for different reasons. We do have difficult budget decisions ahead of us, but I am absolutely determined that we should do everything that we can to preserve as many of our branch libraries as possible, partly because they serve other purposes, such as what Councillor Eddy referred to just now as warm, welcoming spaces for everyone. Particularly, I think we're going to have a surfeit of shivering pensioners this year, and the library network will be a warm and welcoming place for them to keep warm and read a book at the same time.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. We now move on to question 4, or waste. That's from Councillor Glandris to Councillor Dyer. Councillor Glandris, you've got 2 supplementary questions, should you wish.
Thanks very much, Lord. Thank you, Leader, for the answers. I think you can see on a cross-party basis concerns about the mist collection. And if you want to do it, that's fine, because it veers away slightly from the questions I've asked. Clearly, residents are unhappy, but what about the staff? Has there been a survey of the staff to see if they have any suggestions or to take the temperature of the staff mood at the moment to see if we can help with that?
Thank you, Councillor Galandris. Yes, some surveys taking place. I believe there's been an improvement in staff morale, but what we could do is we could ask the new managing director of Bristol Waste if they'd be willing to show the highlights of that.
No further supplementaries.
Thank you, Councillor Galandris. Let's move on to Green Question 5 on the West Rapid Transport Plan. That's from Councillor Edwards to Councillor Dyer. You've got one supplementary, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. A little bit similar to my last question about the train station. You know, we're trying to create modal shift here, and we're trying to get people out of their cars and onto really good transport, and the train station is a good example of that. It is disappointing to hear that this business case isn't going to come forward till 2030, and I hope we can find ways to bring that forward, because this has been going on a really long time. I did note in your reply, which I thank you for, that part of the complexity of this is looking for funding, and I just wondered if the hopefully forthcoming workplace parking levy will be considered as part of that funding, or if there's any way that we can get the West of England Combined Authority to look at those potential funding streams.
Thank you, Councillor Ed. I think, given the transport in Bristol, which has been a problem for a long time, I think we are keen to look at any opportunities to raise funding towards that. Yes, it does take time to put these business cases forward, and it can be frustrating. But we are also aware that there are new proposals coming from the new government, which we hope will also be give us the ability to tie into what's being offered there as well.
Thank you very much. Next is Labour Question 5 on parks accessibility. From Councillor Keane to Councillor Dyer, and Councillor Keane, you've entry.
No supplementaries, thank you, Lord Mayor. Just fantastic to see it coming through.
Thank you very much, Councillor King. Lib Dem 5 is on services station from Councillor Williams to Councillor Plowden. One supplementary, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yeah, it's a great pleasure to see this station open. People who enjoy travelling up and down from it. A couple of Saturdays ago, no, Councillor Edwards was there as well. It's taken an awful long time to get to this point, from first campaigning for it in 2010 to finally opening in 2024. But it is disappointing, I have to say, that given all the political capital of 2 MPs, numerous ward councillors from both sides of the line as well, that now that it's open, there's only a perfunctory hourly service in between Filton Abbey Wood and Bristol Temple Meads, which is not really using the huge potential of the catchment area. Will Councillor Plowden use his best endeavours to put pressure on the current West of England Mayor to allow for more services to stop there, particularly going to Cardiff and Bristol Parkway and to Gloucester? They stop at Filton Abbey Wood at the moment. There are far more people living in the catchment area from Lockleys to Bishopston, Ashley Down and St Andrews than there are at those stations. So we're really not using the potential for this, using the potential of this investment at the moment.
So when the 2 new stations, thank you for that question, come on board, they will also be served. But and I think, as we've seen when they've tried to change timetables, it's a phenomenally complicated thing to do. But the answer is yes. I'll be using every opportunity to try and make sure that we use this and the other rail assets we've got.
Thank you. 5 is on Councillor Michelat, but I don't believe he's here. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to Green Question 6 on rogue landlords and housing improvement. That's from Councillor Ralston for Councillor Parsons. Councillor Ralston, do you have a supplementary? She's not here. Okay, sorry about that. I didn't receive those. Okay, let's move on to Labour Question 6 on bridges. That's Councillor Dudd for Councillor Plowden. One supplementary, please.
Yeah, thanks for on this. I'm concerned about Historic England's involvement within this project. So it was reported at the Harbour Committee a few weeks ago that they're insisting that the World War II bomb damage on the bridge is kept as part of the project. So I thought that was just taking things a little bit too far. It's a complicated project anyway. So I was just wondering if you knew how much that was actually costing the project in terms of the actual cost to deal with the extra complex nature of it, or the time, and what pushback there's been from officers and yourself to challenge this. There was another bridge project, the Iron Bridge in King's Weston. That was delayed for years and years and years. Mainly, one of the big factors was Historic England's involvement in that project. So I'm just a little bit concerned that this might get tied up in that as well.
That's actually news to me, and I'm going to act. I would like to say is that I found Historic England over the last few years have become much better, actually, than they were, and they were very, very absolutist. So I'd be delighted to contact them and work with officers to try and get a sensible solution.
And Conservative question, Councillor Weston, but I believe Councillor Weston isn't here either. Okay, so we'll move on. Thank you. So Green question 7 on citizens' assemblies. That's from Councillor O'Rourke for Councillor Dar. Councillor O'Rourke, you've got one supplementary, please.
Yes. It's on. Yeah. Oh. Oh, it's broken. Off again. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I'll look at it and it'll stay on. I just feel I'd like a bit more of a commitment around the word rigour in the question. The Citizens' Assembly that we led on here in Bristol in 2021 is used as an exemplar. It was a fantastic assembly. The results that came out of it, the recommendations, everything was really good. Unfortunately, the follow-on wasn't as good. We lost pace, we lost the energy for it. I've been told by citizens who took part that they feel a bit let down. And I think it's very simple to remedy that. What I'm really asking for is for somebody, well, and I'm happy to lead on this myself, but with some officer time to go back and look at those recommendations and look at them in light of our present policies and pick them up and then communicate with the citizens and ensure that people understand that we believe that we had a mandate from the citizens to do certain things and that we are doing that. So that's what I'm asking for. I mean, I don't expect you, Tony, to understand those 93 actions. You've got a lot of other things on your plate. But I think somebody in this administration needs to look at that and tell citizens that we are following it through. So can we do that, please?
Okay, thank you, Karen. And I've been into a couple of other questions that was asked today about council transparency and also area committees. I think there is a robust work that is slowly starting to get going but needs to speed up about how we better engage with citizens across the city. And I think citizen juries assemblies can play a key part in that. So I'll take on board your words and I'll action them and get back to you with some ideas of how we can move forward.
Thank you. Labour question 7 on regeneration. Councillor Dudd for Councillor. One supplementary, please.
Yeah, thanks for the answer. I'm obviously really positive that all of those projects are safe. I was just wondering. Yeah, I was going to make a little joke because I've heard that you're spending a lot of time in the north of the city at the moment, and I noticed that the youth zone's down as Hartcliffe when it's in Fieldwood. So I just wondered if you realised that or not. But the serious question I had was around the future process. So how will we, as under the committee system, decide how this strategic seal is spent in future? Because a number of these projects relate to the individual committees. So how can those committees then feed in, I guess, to the strategy and resources to make those decisions in terms of how the money's spent in the interest of the priorities of those committees? So I don't think it's as clear as it could be at the moment.
And I do admit I did go to the Memorial Ground, and thanks to me going, they won for the first time in a number of games. And yes, I am disappointed that the youth zone that is in Noah West, as keeps being referred to as being in Hartcliffe. I have the same problem with the Artcliffe Reuse and Recycling Centre, which is actually in Bedminster. To go back to your more serious point, I think in terms of the use of strategic community infrastructure levy and how that's paid, I mean, you've now been seeing the list of projects, and many of them are over a period of 10 years. And there will be occasions where we may need to adjust according to what happens and what comes forward. Particularly, you know, as you may have noticed, we have a new government. They may come forward with some ideas which may allow us to further improve or adjust. I think it's an interesting question. Is strategy and resources as responsibility for the overall finances, but each individual policy committee will have responsibility for how money is spent specifically within the areas they're responsible for. And in some instances, there may be cross-cutting issues. The way we used to, I mean, obviously when we had a cabinet system, everything was covered in one meeting. With the policy committees, there's a slightly different approach, but what I expect we'll do, and what we've already started to do elsewhere, is, if you remember when we had scrutiny committees, when there were items that needed to cover more than one scrutiny committee, we had combined meetings, and we could do the same thing with policy committee meetings as well.
Thank you. Conservative question 7 on harsh tenancy succession cases from Councillor Morris to Councillor Parsons. Councillor Morris, you've got 2 supplementaries.
My Lord Mayor, the response, Barry. Really pleased to see that we adopt a sympathetic approach. I think what our residents need, because most of these are elderly people, in my experience, is the reassurance, maybe in a form of a letter from the council, just confirming the process that they can be expected when the tenant passes away, leaving a surviving spouse, who perhaps themselves have never been on that initial tenancy. It's something that does cause a lot of concern for our residents, and I think that degree of reassurance would really be sympathetic. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. So just so clear about the request, are you proposing that we write to all of our older residents in council homes to explain to them what the process for succession is? Is that right?
I think there needs to be a policy in place. I don't know whether we need to, you know, there's going to be a lot of communication with council tenants for a few years because of the perilous state that the HRA is in. But maybe on a reactive basis, when residents raise those concerns to us via councillors, that we can just have a standard letter to go back out to explain it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm very happy to take that up with officers.
Councillor Morris, did you have a second supplementary? No. Green question 8 on briefing attendance. That's from Councillor Levan to Councillor Dyer. You've got 1 supplementary.
No, thanks. I'm satisfied with that answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Levan. Labour question 8 on school safety. Councillor Hornchin to Councillor Plowden. Councillor Hornchin, you've got 1 supplementary.
Thank you, and thank you for the answer. It was a very good answer for some of the things, but it still have an issue around school parking, which I'm sure is not only in Brislington East. One of the things I'd want to know, are you thinking of furthering the camera cars? Because I live on the border of South Gloucestershire, and I can assure you as a teacher in South Gloucestershire, they work very efficiently because people are frightened of them.
Funnily enough, I've an answer to that. School enforcement may better lend itself to camera enforcement, and this is something that officers have on their roadmap. Although there would be an initial capital cost to the purchase and setup of a camera system, it could be more effective to operate in the long term. So it's on the roadmap. I think that's not really a yes or no, but it's certainly something that's in consideration. I think I would like to actually say that back in 2014, Eric Pickles stopped this any council enforcing parking with use of cameras. And since then, there's a number of roads in Bristol that have really ground to a halt, made it extremely difficult for bus operators to operate. And there's a whole load of places where we see that, you could have an enforcement officer go right along the street, whether it be outside a street or on one of our busy high streets. And then when they came back again, it would still be clogged up with poor parking. So that would be a really great quick win for this new incoming government to reverse that. It's something that Eric Pickles did on a whim. So, and that would enable us to do a lot more parking enforcement across the city and support more sustainable travel.
South Gloucestershire has.
Sorry, you've had your supplementary. Thank you very much, Councillor Hornchin. So let's move on to the Conservative question. That's from Councillor Udin, but I don't believe Councillor Udin is here. So we'll move on to Green question 9, South Bristol Cemetery expansion. That's from Councillor Wilcox to Councillor Williams. Councillor Wilcox, you've got one supplementary.
I'd like to thank the for the response he's given, and I have no further questions.
Thank you very much. Labour question work. That's from Councillor Hornchin to Councillor Dyer. One more supplementary, please.
At this point in time, I just wanted to say that I meant close the case. The only supplementary I have is, does that mean that the drain that's been going on back and forth with the council will finally be cleared?
I was certainly hope.
Okay, thank you. And just double check, Councillor Ralston's not here, is that right? Councillor, yeah, okay. So let's move on to Labour question 10 on waste services. That's from Councillor Renard. Is Councillor Renard here? No. Okay. So we'll move on to Labour question 11 on HMOs. That's from Councillor El-Maghrabi for Councillor Parsons. Councillor El-Maghrabi, supplementary on that.
I don't have a supplementary, but thank you for the answer.
Thank you very much, Councillor El-Maghrabi. And also question 12 on gullies flooding. Also from Councillor El-Maghrabi for Councillor Fodor. Councillor El-Maghrabi, do you have a supplementary? Fodor?
No, I don't. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the member forum question. We have time for member statements. We've received one member statement from Councillor Joss Clark on bus franchises. Councillor Clark, you've got a minute to summarize the statement.
Sorry, I am completely unprepared. I think I'm just going to have to leave. I'm really, really sorry. I've just been consumed with other things today. So I won't use my minute, and I've probably used half of it already, apologising. So sorry about that.
So just to conclude, franchising good. Okay, all right. Okay, that concludes statements and also the meeting. We will reconvene at 6 o'clock for full council. Thank you very much, everyone.